cloud.
Not yet.
There we go.
Got
Okay.
it.
Okay, there we go. Okay, guys, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Today we're going to round out more of the White House EDRM presentation. My intention from there is to go over some practical exercises dealing with budgeting and you know, tool use and that kind of thing. Just kind of catching up, and wanted to appreciate everyone that was able to show up to the seminar on April 12th. It was not mandatory, of course, to go, but you did get some extra credit if you go. You can skip an assignment. Just, let me know which assignment you're going to skip, and we'll, you can skip one of them for full credit. If it's one of those assignments where you're supposed to do some posting, just put I attended the seminar on 4/12, and we'll go from there. You can't use it for the final or for anything along those lines. And if you missed something in the past and you attended, you could use it to cover for that. So I should be all caught up with grading within the next week, and we'll start posting new assignments and information within the next week or so. We still have a ways to go. It's only mid-April. We have all of May still. So hang in there, and we'll get through it together. If you have any trouble, please reach out to me directly. I'm happy to work with you if you have an issue, and we'll get you through the class. Please don't quit if you're right here in the middle. We'll get you through this, okay? So last weekend, April 12th, we did a e-discovery boot camp at Santa Ana College. It was in conjunction with the California Lawyers Association and Women in E-Discovery. It was, I think, a really big success. There were over 300 who registered. We got about 150-ish who showed up. Quick screen share. Let's see here. And what we did was give me a second. Computer's slow. I'm sorry, guys. What we did was a rotating set of lectures. I think there were 10 different lectures going on. I was there with my colleague, Noelle Smith, who was our Page Vault expert. Page Vault is a social media collection tool. It really does a fantastic job of what it does. And so I thought it was a really big success. A lot of really great comments. Paul, you were there. Is there anything you want to add?
I thought it was great. I thought, aside from the presentations, it was very interesting for me to see what kind of people that meet the different people involved in e-discovery and see what they do. And also there were 4 recruiters there, and they were all very experienced people. And I thought they were, it was fun to listen to their advice about getting into the field and offer their points of view.
Yeah, it did have a good diversity of people attending. Everything from students to seasoned paralegals and attorneys. Mitch Rufka and Joy Morale came. Joy, you recall, did our presentation on legal hold. She does some recruiting and education as well. Highly recommend, if you're continue to be interested in legal tech, to reach out to her. I'm happy to facilitate any introduction to her. Mitch Rufka, very experienced recruiter in SoCal. Another good relationship to have. Can be a little hard if you're not experienced at times to get in with a recruiter. But sometimes projects come up, sometimes they're asked for that entry-level person. So please get your name out there, get that resume prepped. Lots of really good now there's some fantastic Gen AI resume resources out there. And I'm happy to take a look at your resume if you ever want me to take a look at it. But the real idea behind a conference like this and the benefit to students is exposure. Exposure to the tools, like what am I talking about every week? How does that work together? And seeing a little bit about how the tools work and how they fit within the phases, all kind of I think lend itself to it being a really good and beneficial event for students, along with all the different people you meet and opportunity to bounce your employment ideas or career ideas off of people. I hope that as students that you reached out to anyone that was presenting and tried to link with them on LinkedIn. Sorry, it's an early morning Saturday and my still dying here a little bit. It's not that early on Saturday, it's 10 a.m. But I hope you've made connections if you had any kind of conversation with people. And really you didn't even have to have a conversation. Just reach out on LinkedIn. May not help you out today, but it could help you out tomorrow.
Well, I kind of enjoy how everything is kind of fitting together. And I'm also interested in, you will be talking about budgeting soon, because I have the technology experience, and I think budgeting is a very important part of the business. So,
Yeah.
it fits together very nicely for me.
Well, what litigation support people and paralegals have become is really good project managers, right? Tracking all the little pieces, documenting everything that they do, and putting that all together so that it's in a project plan. And we're going to go over a super basic project plan, I believe, at some point. But you really should get the idea that your job is going to revolve around project management and documenting everything from, it was one in this slide deck. It's everything that from documenting who the custodians are and the questions asked to production dates, volume of information, how many records were produced, which records were produced, having a copy of that production somewhere. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we hit production.
Great.
I think we left off around here, around processing. Is that
Yes.
about right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you all see the slide that says processing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
great. And chime in if you have any questions. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Okay. So, hold on. Let me go to my magic deck here. Second. So let's kind of review just a little bit. We've talked about identification, right? Like who has the data, where is the data, how much data is there, what kind of data is it? Preservation, who is going to get an order to preserve the data on their computer? How is it going to be transmitted to them? Joy Morale demonstrated new tools in the industry, electronic tools that are, you know, kind of taking over and allow us to send those messages electronically. Send the messages electronically and track whether people have it, received it and acknowledged it and are preserving that data. There's tools in this area that do it automatically for people. But I would say the vast majority out there have no kind of technology whatsoever, and you're relying on people sending an email or sending a message of some kind and their manager relaying it out to them. Again, imagine, like I think everyone's perspective on this is, you're working for Microsoft and they have all these tools, and that's all true and that's fantastic. And even when it's Microsoft, I'm sure it's not a perfect collection. I know it's not a perfect collection. But now imagine if it's Starbucks and you're doing a wage an hour and, nobody at Starbucks or McDonald's has a work computer. I don't foresee, all the Starbucks baristas having a laptop or something along those lines that is assigned to them by Starbucks. So how do you, how would you do a legal hold and, for employees like that, right? And they may not, and on the other hand, they may not have that much data. So how do you do that, right? So, and can you rely on the local manager, in downtown Santa Ana to send the message to everybody that they need to hold any information around some incident or, document something? So, it's really hard to get compliance with people when it comes to preservation. Collection is, of course, where we take the data, we collect it. We go sometimes remotely and get the data off of their computer, phone, chat, whatever it is. And today we're going to be talking about processing. We're probably going to talk about processing, review, and analysis. Maybe we'll get into production a little bit. So imagine for a second, you have your phone, right? Or your computer, or a hard drive full of, I know it's not really showing up because my screen, my background, little hard drive, my telephone, or my computer. That's not uncommon, I bet you, for anyone in the class. And we've now collected those things. We have a forensic image of that data, and we now need to put it into a database, right? That's processing. And processing is where, hold on, give me 1 second. I'm on a committee that's changing some of these definitions. I want to see where we're at. But processing basically is where we take that electronic file and we pull the metadata out of it. Remember, almost every, especially if it's a Microsoft or a Google file, almost every file has, your pictures on your camera and phone and things like that. Literally could have hundreds of fields of metadata, and contained within that file. And so when we process, we're looking for, tools that are going to handle the metadata correctly, are going to take those different metadata fields and field them into a database where every type of data has its own field. The data is placed into a field and to a record in a database. Sometimes millions, sometimes millions upon millions. And allows us to then search by database. So what are smaller firms doing? Because they may not have the budget to do this. Hold on 1 second, let me get this up. They may take they may PDF everything, right? Either through a vendor or themselves. And then they have this big pot of PDFs that are sitting there on their computer, right? And what you might get is the ability to do a keyword. Okay, one keyword. You're not going to, you'll be able to do a search and maybe you'll find it, assuming the document's PDF'd correctly and pulled the metadata out, right? And so when the records are the benefit of having a database are that since everything is fielded, I can say, give me everything where Paul shows up, give me everything between Paul and Jose when they email between the dates of March 1st, 2025 and March 15th, 2025. And which allows us to really narrow down very quickly the date, the records we're looking for. Alternatively, if you have a big bucket of PDFs, and let's say we had 10,000 records. If you search for Paul and you search for Jose, you're going to get a subset of records, and you're going to have to go through one by one and review them. The next thing that these databases bring is a structure that allows you to quickly go through records. So if I had to go through in my example, if I did my Paul and Jose search and I ended up with 500 records, right, which would be much bigger than what I would get in the database because the database is more precise. First, I'd have to open up each one of those 500 records, right? I'd have to click on the Adobe file, open it, take a look, close it, copy it over to wherever the pile that is the responsive pile or not needed, right? Each one of those actions might take a minute or so, and it's very tedious. Whereas a database, let me see if I'll get one of our example databases up. A database wouldn't do that. Here, let me see. Hold on. A database would allows us to go record by record by record. It has a coding palette that allows us to make issue codes and code records to various legal issues, whether they're responsive, non-responsive, and decide whether they're ultimately going to be produced or need further analysis.
Is there like a way to search that by like keywords? Would a database be able to do that if you were searching for something specifically on those emails?
Say that one more time.
Wouldn't the database help you out searching for keywords or phrases specifically to what you're looking for?
Yeah, database can help with phrases. You can do some phrasing in Adobe, but it doesn't work real great. Some common exceptions to these records is, what if the record's a fax or an image? An image with text. And so some, not all, of the database choices out there will recognize images and OCR it. So again, OCR is not as perfect as, so there's extracted text and OCR. They're two different things. Extracted text is I have a, let me open up a Word document and demonstrate this better. Second. Here is a document. It doesn't matter what the content of the document is. It's actually a pretty good example. All of this text that basically that I can select can be extracted, and it'll be extracted perfectly. So exactly as is, right? This image, because it's an image with, this is an image within the document, it's not text. You can see text, but it's a picture of text. It's a graphic. That text may not be, will likely not be included in the database record, but everything else will be extracted from this. Now, this graphic that's here, I don't think it'll be picked up in our normal process, and it's giving me something to think about here. But let's say you had an entire document, you know, a PDF. A PDF can be an image-only PDF with no text to extract. A good solution would be to OCR, that's optical character recognition, where the computer, where the program attempts to read the text that's on the screen and make determinations as to what those words are. It's subjective by the computer trying to figure it out. And it's wholly dependent on the font used, the size of the font, how clear it is. You know, typically handwriting doesn't work all that great. And, you know, it's usually like 80 to 90% accurate. And if you think about it, if 80 to 90% accuracy is good, and then if you look at the, here, I'll enlarge it. That means that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But the two of these could be wrong. This could be an A, and this could be an O, right? Why is that important? Because if I'm searching for the word Ben, as in you've been nominated, BEEN, it's not going to find it, right? And so we have to think about that as we employ search strategies for documents. How good of quality were the text extractions? Am I dealing with a lot of OCR? And if I'm dealing with a lot of OCR records, that would mean that I might want to use some wild cards when I'm searching, so that I can find the records that I'm looking for, right? So I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but give me a second. So the old definition of processing is reducing the volume of ESI. ESI is electronically stored information, and converting it, if necessary, to forms more suitable for review and analysis. And it's going to be, we think it's going to be changed to normalize. So that means take all these different formats that are out there, everything that's out there, normalize and convert ESI to forms more suitable for review and analysis. We thought that there was too much focus on review. There's things like investigations and other data analysis that we're doing with the data. And wanted to so it's basically converting it to a database record, right? This database, this slide talks about it's a chance to limit some of the volume of data that's out there. There's different paths this ESI might take. There are data. This might be a little confusing, but we have databases. Some have databases called early case assessment, which we're going to get into in a second, and others are review only. So early case assessment is where we can put lots of data to make decisions about what is being promoted into review. And review is where all the higher level analysis and documents that are likely going to be produced are put, the most important documents in your case. That early case assessment database, if you've collected broadly, right, it allows you to put that data in there, only promote what you have, and you're going to use in your review. But you have still additional records should the issues change, and they often change as you're going through the case. I prefer a little bit of a broader collection. Many people, because of the cost of putting this data, because of processing costs, hosting costs, are very targeted in the way that they collect data. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it does mean that if anything goes wrong, that you're going to have to go back to the well and recollect from that person. So what are some of the ways that that data is culled or reduced? I think we talked about this a little bit. We talked about denisting. I'll go over it again really briefly. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They create a list of files that aren't usable in these kinds of databases, except in maybe the extreme circumstance. And so right off the bat, if you've done a full forensic, everything on that person's computer hard drive, including the Windows files, all the program files, it's going to exclude all that stuff, greatly reducing the volume of data that goes into your database. Search terms, you may say at processing. More likely you would do this in an ECA database. You would use some search terms, some date limitations, and deduplication. It's where you take, I always use my Girl Scout example. If everybody in the class, I send everybody in the class an email to buy my daughter's Girl Scout cookies. Paul gets it, Jose gets it, Megan gets it, Myra gets it, Krista gets it. And what it'll do is it'll keep the first copy that it sees, and then it'll just put everybody's name into an all custodians field to reflect that everyone has that same exact email. To do processing, you use specialized software tools. So some of the tools like Relativity have that built in. A lot of vendors use outside tools to process and then import into Relativity. A lot of work goes into that. This is just a little bit on the size of files that you get, and why that's important is that look at your computers and you can see per gigabyte. Let's say you had 100 gigs, right, of email. Well, every gig of email could be, if you look, MSG files, there's about 5,000 per gig. EML files, about 12,000. So 100 times 4,873. You could end up with 500,000 emails. Yeah, and it happens all the time. Give me a second here. How many emails do I have in my mailbox right now? About 19,000. So yeah, you know, these are just super rough estimates that we make. So this company Catalyst says about 3,500 documents in a gigabyte. So if you're trying to do a lot of spitballing as you see the data come in, and you're like, oh my gosh, we have 500 gigabytes of data. That could be, you know, 500,000 files, and in that, if it's shocking your conscience that you know, this is a $50,000 case or some small potatoes case, that, you know, maybe you want to come up and agree with the other side to use some keywords or other limitations that would reduce the size of files in this database.
Question: on average,
Yeah.
how long do you time spent reviewing all those, like that amount of records?
So that's a really good question. So I know I'm gonna butcher this expression, but it goes something like, you can review any amount of records in any amount of time, given, what is it, time, criteria, and money. So in other words, you know, if you don't have very strong criteria, you can just click every, you know, 500,000 records responsive, but that's not a very responsible way to do things. And likewise, if you had $50 million, you could line up 10,000 reviewers to get it done overnight, but you want to do that. So you find out and create a budget. And generally, I think we say 45 to 60 pages per hour. Maybe documents. Documents, you know, a document could have 1 page, a document could have 10,000 pages. I think the average database record is around 5 pages, something like that, when you consider emails and bigger records. I might have had databases because they dealt with mortgage records where the average record size was 1,000 pages. But yeah, so if you think of the 500,000 page, you know, example, and you do 60 documents, 500 document example, which would probably be about 2.5 million pages. You could probably do, it would take at 60 pages, 60 documents an hour, around 8,333 hours to do. So you're going to look for techniques to reduce that time.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
Right. So then you go, okay, I need 20 reviewers, right? Divide by 20. Those reviewers are going to, each reviewer is going to need to take about 416 hours to do it. And that's why we start looking at technology, and why Gen AI is really promising, because it can help with some of the heavy lifting when it comes to first level. There's multiple levels of review, and the thought that Gen AI might be able to take care of that first level review and help spot the issues that are in the records, I think is very, very interesting. So I mentioned earlier, so it can take quite a while. We've done cases where some big media company bought another big media company, and the deal needed to get done in a month or something like that, and there were millions upon millions of pages of documents that need to be reviewed. I think we ended up having several hundred reviewers, diving through those documents, looking for a single issue, right? So it was really quick, but if you have a unlimited budget, you can get through those documents really quick. Early case assessment, categorize and understand your ESI population. Size and scope, file formats, keyword testing, taking a look at your timeline, domain reporting, right? Domain is where the emails came from. So I work at Munger, Tolles and Olson. You probably have received an email from my MTO email address or my Gmail. Those are the domains. One thing we're also looking at doing is to prioritize certain data types or people, right? When we're doing this review, we want to start with the most important issues and the most important people. When we're doing these document reviews. So if you think of starting with the CEO of the company, right? We want that if the issue is about him or her, we want to review those docs first, right? Likewise, if it's some stock trader and it's about some specific, let's call it the Girl Scout cookie stock caper, we're going to be looking for Girl Scout cookie and all sorts of other issues around that so that we can bubble that up to be reviewed first. And really what you're doing is you're getting rid of the data that you don't need at this time for the case. Or actually, you're taking the data that you need for the case and moving it over to a higher level database called a review database. Lots of issues can occur in processing. It's gotten much better over the years. You want to make sure I think every paralegal should be taking a look at every data load. Litigation support people take a look at every data load that comes in. We take a look at it. We look at does the number of records that were processed match what we thought it was going to be. When you look at the imaging, is the imaging right? When you look at the database record, did the right time zone get put in? Imagine for a second that you were dealing with West Coast and East Coast institutions. Which time zone do you process these records in, which later end up being shown on the document itself? We actually use UTC time zone as the way that we search for most documents, because it levels the playing field between, let's say, New York and LA, right? Because if we process everything into Pacific time, everything is going to be, everything that's in California will be right. Everything from New York will be wrong, which can cause a lot of issues. So we have multiple fields in the database that deal with the UTC time zone, Pacific time zone, all that kind of stuff, so that we can have an accurate representation of the dates.
Does that also apply to international time zones?
Yeah, well, UTC time zone is it's the one used for all time zones are based on. Let's see if I can find a map. Hold on. So UTC is right here. Starts in Europe basically and moves on. And so it bases the time based on this, right? If we are in here's the offset, right? So if times 0 is Europe, basically Europe and Africa. And you look across the top, this is what it's based on for the differential. So over here in California, we are at over here in California, we're at -8 from this time zone. So that would be plus 16 hours, right? Give or take. I always found it unusual to see these little pockets like Iceland, and what are they doing over here? All right. Anyways. Hold on. Okay, so testing. Really importantly, testing. Every processing job comes with an error log. The error log is a set of records that did not process. And it's vital that paralegals take a look at the error log for every single processing job. What if you went to great effort to get the most important files from the CEO, the ones that are going to be most important, right? And they were password protected, so they didn't process in, and you never reviewed the error log, so you never knew that those files were in. And so you search through millions of records thinking that the important ones were in there, and they never came up because they were never placed in the database. And that happens time and time again. So you have to review the error log. Search terms help us reduce volume. Reduced volume equals reduced cost, right? So if you think of volume of data, the more data, the more it's going to be. And it's exponential, right? Because if I keep additional data in the, if you need it, you got to put it in there. But if you're sloppy about what goes into review, it just means that not only are you going to have a higher hosting and processing costs, like that one time, these one-time costs to get the data in. Well, hosting's not one time, it's monthly. That it's going to take additional, even more expensive, it's going to take additional attorney time, paralegal time, litigation support time to maintain it, to search it, to review records. So volume equals costs. We don't like volume, but we do have to make good decisions about what goes in and what goes out. Search techniques can be simple or complex. Basic keywords, names, places, products, code words, abbreviations, email aliases. So you see my email as shannonlexbales@gmail.com or shannon.bales@mto.com. The person that I sent an email to might have me in as their contact as Bales, or they may have me in by my middle name, Lex, and so it's important that you determine all of the email aliases that might be in a database, so that you can search, so that if we're looking for Paul and Paul's email is paul@gmail.com, let's just search for paul@gmail.com. And we don't realize that his email alias might be Paul the Lion, or Awesome Paul, or whatever it is. And we don't search for those, we're doing ourselves a disservice. And of course, all the Boolean searching that you use with Google typically applies to most databases. There's something called proximity searches. You can say, I want Paul within 10 words of Jose. I can say I want it exactly in Paul first, Jose second, or I can say within any order, say within 5 or within 500. We do this to kind of narrow down the data populations. It's usually by agreement. Wildcards and stemming. So again, that's where you're going to use those wildcards, especially if you're worried about if you're worried that the person was a bad speller, right? You're going to use wildcards, and you're going to be careful with how you search, because maybe they spell badly. And the use of stemming is like I say, if I say I want to search for doc, stemming would find document, documents, documentation, all the different things that would come after doc. Understanding your dictionary, what's been indexed in the dictionary is important. Doing a dictionary search can be very helpful. Hey, is this word in there? I'm getting 0 results. Is this word even in there? So that's looking at the list of words that are contained in the database that are used for searching purposes. So taking a look at that dictionary can be very helpful and very important. Sometimes you'll see a word on a page extracted, and then you look for it in the dictionary and it's not there. It could be one of two things. One, it could be a stop word, which we'll talk about in a second. Or two, and often very common, is that it wasn't indexed. There was an index error, and that word didn't make it into the database, into the dictionary that the database uses to search. So these, again, are ways that paralegals who are more familiar with the case can take a look and get things into the database. Stop words. We used to, the cost for storage and space used to be so expensive that we would have long stop word dictionaries. And stop words are common words like the, and, of all these very common words that would just be excluded from the database index. Again, smaller database index means smaller size. Hosting is cheaper now, so I don't think we worry about the stop words as much anymore. What are you searching? It's essential that you understand how the software works, so that a lot of people, they think this image is going to be searchable. Of course it was OCR, and it never was. So finding some of those records that you're familiar with and know that might be problematic, I think is a really great first step as a paralegal to go through and determine if those are in the database or not. A lot of mistakes with images, and then there's images of evidence, right? Like, I'm taking a picture of an oil well, right? I'm taking a picture of a stream, and you can see some oil or a sheen on the stream. and all the different things that might have occurred there. Here's a fire hydrant. Here's the broken pipe, if we're talking about some sort of oil spill case. There's some very rudimentary technology out there right now that would allow you to say, show me all the fire hydrant pictures. But it's certainly not pervasive, and it's very, very basic. And for images like like the ones that I just described, it's important that you understand that it may not find the fire hydrant right when you're searching for it. Additional, let me bring this document back over. Databases can be configured differently by different organizations. Most of the time, you're searching what you see on the face of the document here, right? Here's the face of the document. And it's searching through that. If your intention is to search through metadata or potentially some hidden text that could be in the document, you're going to have to make sure that what you intend to be searching and what you've been asked to search for is what you are indeed searching. So prove it to yourself first. Run some test searches, run some analysis to make sure you're getting you're searching for and finding what you need to find. How do you come up with search terms? Witness issues, names of key persons, first, last, nicknames, product, project, code names and numbers. All of these things are kind of, I think, suggestions I would make in a brainstorming session with your team.
I have a question.
Sure.
Normally when the paralegals are processing, the workflow, are they expected to document the search terms they use?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
How did you arrive at the data set, right?
Mm-hmm.
You promoted, you had 1 million records in your early case assessment database. How did you decide what were the keywords or what was the terminology used to promote records from ECA to review, which is where the attorneys might do all their work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So documenting decisions made along the way becomes very, very important.
So then when it goes to review, then the reviewers or the attorneys would look at the search terms used. Is that correct?
No, I don't think, you might be working with an attorney to create that data set, okay? So you're working with the legal team, you're figuring out what works, you're figuring out together in ECA what is going to be used to promote those records to review for reviewers to review, right?
Okay.
And they don't care. The reviewers don't care at all how you created the database records for them.
Okay.
Zero, because they just get paid by the hour. They're often temps, law students, that kind of thing. They just want documents to review so they can get the job done.
Okay. Thank you.
But I think all the analysis occurs with you and the attorney and legal team, making sure you've adequately searched the database and included those records that are important.
Okay.
How do you know if your search terms are working? You analyze the results, right? What's hitting? How is it hitting? When you poke around in things that were not hits, right? Are you finding things that should have been included? Or you might want to broaden your search so that it would be included. So don't get tunnel vision and just look at the results. You want to look bigger. And those non-hits might be helpful in the future if you end up having to recollect or issues change in the case. And having all that in the database already can be helpful. So I should probably do there's a pluses and minuses on like I mentioned before, overly broad means more data, means more expense, but also means that you probably never have to go back to the client site to perform further collection. Lots of negotiation with opposing counsel on search terms. We just get volumes and volumes of data. What's going to be important here, and gets us to the volume that we need, right? So lots of work in terms of let's create that search. And once we're happy with it, that's what we're going to use, right? Data deduplication. There's a high rate of duplication in data sets. Again, I go back to my Girl Scout cookie example. Everyone in the company is going to have an email from me saying, buy these cookies, right? And we identify those duplicates. What is and again, it's not a near duplicate, it's an exact duplicate, which is done through that hash value. If you recall, a hash value is a mathematical equation, and every company has a different one applied to a database record. They might take like 5 fields, turn the text in those fields into some numerical value, and through a formula come up with a unique number, right? I think I'm sure there's hash value creators. Calculator. Yeah, hold on. So like here's a hash value calculator. Let's see. It's the long video. Hold on, let me find that smaller one. Okay, here's some unimportant picture. Give me a second. It's a receipt. And I've never used this one. So here you go. These are different kinds of hash values. The MD5 hash is, I think, most common. SHA-1, SHA-256, SHA-512. And that's a hash value. That's what a hash value looks like. And if I put another image in there, it's too big. No, let's see. Turn it off. And it'll give me a completely different number. So if those numbers are exactly the same, it's a duplicate. It gets removed as an individual record. You get the first one as an individual record, and all subsequent people go into the all custodians field to reflect that all these people have the record. A near duplicate. Let's say I sent you, Paul and Jose, the email shopping for, offering, the Girl Scout cookies. And then you, out of the kindness of your heart, forwarded that to a friend, right? Forwarded that to a friend to buy the cookies, right? You have someone who's a Girl Scout cookie lover. Um, and all it contained was, Paul forward, here's those Girl Scout cookies, something like that. The file would be substantially similar to the email that I sent, but any difference whatsoever would be picked up and it would get a different hash value and it would not be duplicative, right? It would be what's called a near duplicate. And a lot of the databases have near duplicate analysis so that you can say, let's say you find some document that's important to you. You could say, first thing you would say is give me everything that's a duplicate, right? Then you would say, give me everything that is a near duplicate, right? And you could set a threshold, whether that's 95%, 90, 85, 80. And it allows you to prioritize other important dots in the review. Email threading. Let's see. Let's go through the symbol. I think there's a slide on it. And we'll probably end with processing today. So we typically globally dedupe, which means across everybody. We also dedupe within a custodian. So let's say, Jose, we collected your email and you had 5 backups of your email. All of those backups would not end up as duplicative records in the database. They would just be removed. Questions? What's next? Review. Okay, we'll do that one next time. Any questions about processing?
I have a question.
Sure.
About how much of the data which goes through processing, how much of it is, I gather most of it is structured. Is there any unstructured data?
Yes. So yes, we get a lot of structured and unstructured data. Let me get a better definition of it. Compare it. So structured data is organized in a predefined way, making it searchable and analyzable like a database table. So a lot of the documents that we have, would be considered unstructured data. But because we're just pulling the metadata out, let's see. Second. Second. I mean, most of the documents that we deal with are unstructured data. When we're dealing with structured data, the problem becomes you're in a lawsuit with Walmart or Amazon or Facebook or whatever it is, and they have these giant databases, right? Could be millions and millions or billions of records. And you can't just collect the entire database, because who has the ability to completely duplicate Amazon's, customer list or something like that, right? So what you're looking at is some sort of export from those databases in a format that is usable, because a database is basically a bunch of structured columns, and so what you're looking to do is create a report of each one of those records, so that they can go so that we can import that into our database and use it. That would be the subject of some sort of negotiation between parties, like what fields are included, what does it look like, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
That's all I really have. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week. It was great seeing you all. And any other questions? Jose, you got anything?
No, good. Thank you.
Okay, great to see you. Thank you. And again, let me know if you were at the sessions, and we'll get you skipped on some assignments. I'll talk to you soon
Okay,
on
thank
ASI.
All right.
Okay,
Bye.
have a good weekend.
thank you. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to all that celebrated.